A Russian pilot encountered a UFO in 1948 and tried to attack it with extremely unfortunate results for both. The pilot was blinded by rays of light emanating from the UFO.
It is believed that under direct orders from Soviet Air Force Commander-in-Chief Zyugarov, the pilot engaged the UFO for almost 3 minutes before launching a missile that was finally able to bring the object down. But unlike Roswell, this crash never made the papers.
It's 1948, it's a secret airbase. Suddenly a cylinder appears over Russia's most sensitive airbase. They scramble the MiGs. It's a dogfight. Russian pilots are good. And imagine this plane getting right on top of that craft. The MiGs fire their rockets as the directed particle beam weapon explodes the MiG, and they both go down.
Reports suggest that the blinded pilot, in his final attempt to regain control of his MiG, was hit by the object's weapons and perished along with his airplane.
What did the aliens use? What were they firing? What they were probably using was a particle beam weapon. We know what the MiG used. It was the things that the Russians were using at the time. It was firing its guns, it was firing its rockets, and it was firing some very early version of a missile. Somehow, that MiG was able to break up the anti-gravity envelope that surrounded the craft. The cigar-shaped object couldn't stay aloft anymore and crashed. And the Russian retrieval teams, overjoyed that they have their first spacecraft, jump on this thing, and they take it underground to Zitkar, and the Russian secret UFO program begins. I'm Bill Burns, publisher of UFO magazine.
Let's face it, everybody wants to get his hand on a flying saucer. It's a wonderful weapons delivery and defense system. I'm Stanton Friedman. I'm a nuclear physicist, lecturer, ufologist.
This 1948 crash is one of many strange events that has turned Kapustin Yar into an even more mystifying version of America's Roswell and Area 51.
The Soviets had to get their hands on what we had. We had the Roswell crash. We really had a storehouse of technology that we developed in the early 1960s out of Roswell. The Russians didn't have that. Well, how do you get that technology? It doesn't just fall out of the sky. You go after it. And the Russians went after it by embarking on suicide missions. Anything they could do to get their MiG pilots to shoot down an extraterrestrial spacecraft was fair game.
From the time it was constructed in the early 1940s, Kapustin Yar was cloaked in secrecy. It is a place where it is said the Soviet Union's top researchers, scientists, and military specialists were sent to develop highly classified Cold War technology and weaponry.
I know everything because I spent months and years in the Kapustin Yar, working there testing our cruise missiles that we designed for the Soviet submarine to sink American aircraft carriers.
Kapustin Yar was on a very short list of facilities that the U.S. intelligence wanted to get imagery of. There are basically the three things going on there. They're testing surface-to-air missiles, they're testing surface-to-surface ballistic missiles, and they're also testing air-launched missiles, or cruise missiles. All three are going on at the same place, and so it's of high interest to U.S. intelligence.
In fact, the building of the base was so secretive that when a small town nearby was deemed by the Soviet military to be too close for comfort, its residents were evacuated, and it was simply eliminated. The name of the town? Zitkar.
Zitkar is a small town just a few miles downrange of the Kapustin Yar test complex, and basically probably what happened was the Russians decided that due to people seeing what was being tested, it would be better to just close that town off.
Many researchers believe the name Zitkar was subsequently assigned to the highly classified subterranean UFO research center beneath Kapustin Yar.
There is an idea that in Zitkar and Kapustin Yar there is a storage point for crashed UFOs and corpses of the visitors and members of their crew.
Zitkar is analogous to what Area 51 is to Nellis Air Force Base and Groom Lake in Nevada. Different countries have various places where they take their UFO technology. And what they do with it is they try to break it down. They see what it is and how can we reverse engineer this.
But long before the 1948 crash, The area around Kapustin Yar and the skies over Russia have been home to many other well-documented and eerie encounters with UFOs. Some date back to a time before what we know as Russia even existed.
Russia is a huge land. UFOs have been sighted over its territories for, I would say, thousands of years. I am Paul Stonehill, co-author of UFO USSR. One, which is quite famous, was sighted back about 950 AC by an international traveler of the time, Ibn Fadlan. He and his co-travelers were able to see strange sightings in the sky that scared them immensely. But the local people would laugh at them and say, we see it quite often. Aerial battles, beings fighting each other, strange aircraft, something that's similar to a Star Wars battle scene from a modern movie. Amazing stuff.
Legend has it that the spectacular aerial battles that played out in the skies gave the Arab warriors strength and courage to defeat their enemies during the next day's fight. In the 17th century, Russia experienced a rash of UFO sightings. These objects were described by many who witnessed them as comet-shaped balls of fire.
The most famous one would be the Rob Ozero incident, when a very unusual, huge fiery disc arrived in the area of a northern Russian lake.
One eyewitness submitted the following account.
On this, the 15th day of August in the year 1663, a great crash sounded out from the heavens. Around the stroke of midday, there descended upon Rob Ozero a great ball of fire from the clearest of skies. In front of the fire, there were two fiery beams. It went from south to the west and was about 500 meters away when it vanished. But once again it returned, staying over Rob Ozero for 1 hour and a half, filling all those who saw it with a great dread.
This documented account goes on to detail fishermen scalded by the burning lake, along with glowing fish that flung themselves onto the ground to escape the looming fireball.
Stories, like what they saw over Rob Ozero, were common in pre-revolutionary Russia and outside of Russia in Europe.
When we speak specifically of sightings on the territory of the Soviet Union, percentages are very high, more than 50%, that these UFO sightings would be some sort of fiery, sphere-shaped UFO.
Another extraordinary sighting took place over Moscow in 1892. An eyewitness report was later published in the March 17, 1892 edition of the Russian newspaper Svet.
The pillar of light was pointed straight down to the earth, forming a cone-shaped bundle of rays in the color of ordinary flames. The brightness was considerable and can sometimes be compared to the brightness of an electrical street lamp. The point from which the rays originated didn't move during the whole time, and the rays were visible for 20 to 25 minutes.
While enormous fireballs have been sighted over Russia for centuries, there have been none bigger or more devastating than the event that leveled the Siberian forest of Tunguska in 1908.
And of course it was one of the theories which have to appear that it was not a comet, it was not meteorite, that in reality it was a spacecraft